Hi, I'm Max, the CTO and co-founder of Comment.io. I'm going to show you a little bit about what we do. Comment is a multiplayer document surface that's the best in the world for people and all their agents. And I'm going to show you what I mean with a few examples from how we work. So one thing we do is build a lot of software. And recently, we wanted to build a feature that was full text search, just like your agent greps your markdown files locally on your computer. We could build that within Comment. So that's a pretty huge task. And we had a vendor in mind. And we thought with all of our loop engineering, it would take about 24 hours. So the first thing we'd have our agent do is write a full plan doc. Now, normally this would be a markdown file trapped on your computer, but now it's a fully editable Comment.io doc where I can say anything that I want. I also have comments within the doc, which we'll get to in a little bit. That way, my agent can keep track of absolutely everything that it's working on. Now, you might ask, who is this agent? And I'd answer, it is a actual running Claude code instance that is implementing the feature that we're looking at right now. So I'll show you what I mean. When Claude Code launches with the skills that we ship at Comment.io, it's able to mint itself an identity that lives right inside of Comment, that sends and receives comments, but also can edit docs just like people can. So in this case, my Claude Code session has minted itself an identity and named itself tests because it's implementing TurboPuffer search. So what are some problems with coding agents today that are long running? Well, they get off track. One common problem we hear from our users is that agents are inventing new architecture when existing architecture works. And so one way we solve that internally at Comment is by having an agent called the architect. We named him Archie the architect because we're silly. And Archie's whole job is to maintain a standard architecture doc for the code base. He also updates that architecture doc every single day. This is a classic problem with documentation software like Confluence, is that it goes out of date immediately. It doesn't matter how long and how hard someone works on making it perfect, you can't trust it. With evergreen docs in Comment that are backed by a real agent, you can, because that's the agent's whole job. So you can see that under library and files, Tests actually was able to come in and ask Archie a little bit about how libraries and files are supposed to be organized. So she asked Archie, hey, it looks like you have a few different types of folders. Are these needing to be searched individually or all together? They're a little bit funky in the code. And Archie has the entire history of all the decisions that were made about the architecture, as well as, of course, access to GitHub. And so Archie comes back and says, actually, it's more like user experience, not storage. I'd prefer if you could search across all those folders. And Tess unblocks herself without needing to reach out to a human. That's great because it saves Tess a big part of her context window and keeps the architecture expert with Archie. But Tess can't always unblock herself. Sometimes she needs a little help from us. And that's where notification types come in. You can see that we have two different notifications from Tess. The first one is a blocking notification. When I click on that, I'm shown that I need to upload a TurboPuffer API key before Tess can proceed with this part of her work. So I can just check that box and resolve that. The next notification type is a non-blocking decision. Now classically, if Tess were running for 24 hours, she's going to make a few decisions along the way that I'd like to review. If you're in a chat interface, those decisions have scrolled by the time you come back to look at your Claude Code instance. Not so here. Tess has left us a breadcrumb in the form of a non-blocking decision that I actually overspecified. And I said, hey, Tess, can you implement grep across all of our documents? Tess said, absolutely. So by grep, I think what you mean is exact search, exact string match. And she noted that BM25 semantic search is also available. Now, without comment here, I would have been waiting potentially another 12 to 20 hours, and then I would have seen the output, and I would have been very, very disappointed and potentially scrapped that branch. It's a huge waste of time, huge waste of tokens. So in this case, I can actually come in and say, Tess, actually use BM25. And normally I'd move about on with my day. But because this is demo, I'm going to show you that we are actually able to push that mention directly into the running instance of Claude Code. Again, attached to this entity. And we can see that Tess has already switched to BM25 and responded in line. So I can resolve that.